Hello kids, how are you doing? Hope you're having a great time at Awana tonight. And I'm Pastor Mark, and tonight we're going to talk about a special big sister. There's a story in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, chapter 2, about a big sister who God used in a very special way to help him carry out his plan. So some of you are big sisters. Some of you are big brothers. And this is an interesting story about this big sister named Miriam. Can you say that? Miriam. She was big sister to a man, a baby that grew up to be a man that God used too. And so a few weeks back, Pastor Justin talked about a man named Joseph. Do you remember Joseph had 11 brothers? And those brothers didn't like Joseph very much, and if you remember, they did something really bad. They sold their brother to some people from out of town, and they took him away from his family. Well, that Joseph was used by God to save his people Israel. And part of that plan was they all came to a place called Egypt. And so all of Joseph's brothers and his dad all moved, and all their children and their children's children all moved to Egypt. And so they lived in Egypt. But and Joseph was a man that was very important in Egypt, and his family was welcome and taken care of. But then years went by. Lots of years went by. And the people in charge in Egypt, the king, eventually died. And there was a new king. And this new king didn't know about Joseph. They didn't know how he had saved Egypt from a famine. And so this new king made Joseph's descendants, his children and grandchildren and his nieces and nephews and all the people that came from that family, he made them slaves and made them work. And they had to do whatever the king said. And he was hard. The king was hard on him. But even though he was hard, the people of God, they were called Israelites, they prospered and they grew and grew, and there were more and more of them. And pretty soon the king kind of got afraid. He thought, there's so many Israelites that they're going to decide to rebel and not do what I tell them anymore. And I won't have these slaves, and they'll be trouble. And so he tried to make their life so hard but it didn't work. They kept growing. There were more and more of them. And so then this king, he was very wicked. Very wicked. He did something that was terrible. He said, we have to stop these Israelites from having more babies, because they had so many babies. A lot of you have had little babies in your family, right? And he said, we got to stop this. And so he told the people to kill all the baby boys from Israel, the Israelite baby boys. He said to throw them in the river and drown them. And that was an awful thing to do. And can you imagine what these Israelite moms and dads went through if they had a baby boy and someone was going to come and take them and kill him? And so this one mom and dad had a little baby boy, and they didn't throw him in the river. They were not going to do that, but they hid the baby, and they hid him. And if you've had a new baby in your house, you know that's not easy to keep a baby quiet, is it? Because babies cry. When they're hungry, they cry. When they're tired, they cry. And so this mom and dad, they did the best they could, and they hid this little baby boy. But then he got to be about 3 months old, and you know, babies get harder to hide when they're little, right? Newborns are little, and they sleep a lot, and it's okay you could hide them, but when he got to be 3 months old, it got too hard to hide him, and so somebody was going to find out, and they were going to take him away, and so this mom and dad did something. I'm not sure what their plan was, but they took a big basket. I have a basket here. And this basket is big enough to fit a baby in it, isn't it? You could fit a baby in there. And they took a basket like this, and they took and put some sticky sap. Have you ever gotten some sap on your hands? They took kind of this sap or tar kind of stuff, and they smeared it on there so that it would float in the river. And they put their baby boy in the basket, and then they took it down to the river, you know, where on the side of a quiet river where all the weeds kind of grow up, the cattails and things, they set that little basket like a boat in the river with the baby in it. And they set it to float in there, and then they left it alone. And the little baby's big sister, named Miriam, she stayed down there by the river. She was watching. She was hiding in the bushes on the side of the river, watching to see what was going to happen to her baby brother. They didn't know what was going to happen. But then, something that when we look back, we think God had a plan for that little baby. And the king, the ruler's name, he was a pharaoh. And he had a daughter, and the daughter of the pharaoh was a princess, right? She was the daughter of the king. And she came down there to swim or to bathe in the river. She was bathing in the river, and she saw the little basket floating in the river. And she thought, what in the world? What is that? And she or one of her servant girls went and got this basket out of the river, and it kind of maybe had a lid on it, and they opened it up, and there was a baby inside. What? That must have been a surprise, and the baby was crying. And, then what happened, Miriam, the baby's big sister, did something very brave. Because she was just a slave girl, remember? Her people were all slaves in Egypt. And she did something very brave. She approached the princess. And she asked the princess, she said, do you want me to go find someone a mom from the Israelites to take care of this little baby? To nurse it and to care for it? Because, and the princess said, yes, go find someone like that. And so Miriam, this brave big sister, ran home to her mom, who was the baby's mom, right? And she said, Mom, the princess, Pharaoh's daughter, found our baby, my baby brother, and she wants to keep him, but she needs somebody to care for him until he's grown up a little bit more. And so the baby's mom, she didn't hesitate. She went to the Pharaoh's daughter and said, I can help you. And so Pharaoh's daughter gave her her own baby and said, take this baby home and take care of it and feed it until it's bigger, and then bring it to me, and he'll be my son. And so Miriam, this brave big sister, had a part. God had a plan for protecting that little baby. And she did that. God used him he grew up to be Moses. You've maybe heard of Moses. Moses, many years later, God called Moses to lead his people out of Israel, out of slavery. This little baby that got put in a basket in the water, that got found by Pharaoh's daughter, and then got taken care of by his own mom for a number of years probably, and then he went to live as Pharaoh's son. So that's an amazing story how God used a big sister, and how she was brave, and how she spoke up to the princess, and great things happened. So that's the story of Miriam, Moses' sister. And if you look farther into the story, when they were grown up, many years later, when God was using Moses to lead his people, Miriam was still there with her brother, helping lead the people. So that's our story for today, the story of Miriam. See you next time.